Hey folks, in this episode of the Light Artist Podcast, I get to sit down with Chikai Ohazama. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Light Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Chikai Ohazama is a collector. He's an NFT collector. He's founder of the MONOLITH Gallery and a whole bunch of other things, but we're going to focus on NFTs today. He's agreed to come on the show and kind of, open up and tell us about the world of NFTs from his perspective. And of course, we're going to dive into MONOLITH Gallery from the perspective of the Light.art takeover of MONOLITH Gallery that's happening in a couple of days as we record this. Chikai, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it is an honor to have you on because you're one of those people that have walked the walk. Like we were talking about this before we pressed the record button. You know your way around NFTs, right? You've seen the ups, you've seen the downs, you've seen the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the irrational exuberance, all of the things that go along with playing around in this NFT space. So I want to talk about that stuff. Before we do that, just a quick introduction. Like many people that are watching this know who you are, probably from online, right? Obviously. How do you introduce yourself at, say, a cocktail party or some event? And people walk up to you and say, "Hey, how you do? What do you do, sir?" What do you say? What's your response?
I mean, it's honestly I have so many roles I'm playing these days. I mean, I think in this community, NFT community, especially if I was like NFT NYC, I would introduce myself as like an NFT collector and the founder of Monolith Gallery, which is like a curation platform for NFTs. Yeah. But, I'm also the director of Web3 at Niantic. And Niantic created the game Pokemon Go, as well as Ingress and a bunch of other games. So I have that role also, which is a fairly recent role I took on maybe early this year. And then historically, I have done stuff with Google Maps and Google Earth. I was one of the co-creators of Google Earth through a company called Keyhole that I helped co-found. And then this is even stranger before that, I was a biomedical engineer doing research in 3D ultrasound for the heart. And so my undergraduate and my PhD are in biomedical engineering, which is, again, a very different segment. So you got medicine, got maps, and now art. And so almost like three phases of my sort of career so far.
That's great. Wow. Yeah, that's quite a jump, right? From biomedical engineering to the crypto and NFT space. What drove you over or brought you over to this side? And I'm going to dive into that, the Pokemon Go stuff, because you can't put that out there and not expect me to ask questions about it. But, of course.
Yeah.
Right? But that's quite a leap, right? What was the path between biomedical engineering and full on crypto NFT?
Yeah, the crypto NFT stuff was an accident. I did not anticipate. I mean, I had never bought crypto or anything until the beginning of February, March of 2021. And that happened by accident, because what was happening was I had a company and like many startups, it didn't work out. And so I was in the process of shutting down the company. And as I was shutting it down, which was never a fun process and depressing and all that kind of stuff, I wanted something fun to look at and to sort of keep my mind on other things and sort of do that as a sort of a balance to that process. And so the thing I picked was hey, I heard this thing called NFTs. Let me check it out. I'm curious about it. So I sort of dove into it and read about it and started buying an NFT, then bought another NFT, and then another NFT. And then I fell deep down the rabbit hole. And it was not planned. I'd never had an art background before. I was just curious more than anything else. And the community that was there was just something I'd never been ever seen before. And not only that, but usually when you see those phenomenons happen, like Web 1 and Web 2, for the most part, you see it from the outside. You see the people hanging out and doing interacting in that sort of communities, but I was never really deep part of those online communities. And this is the first time that I actually was part of that community and really became a very very active member of that community. And so it was pretty just something I never ever had sort of come across before, and the fact that they accepted me,
Mm-hmm.
it was like the nerd in high school going in, and the cool art kids are letting them hang out with them, and so I was like, wait a minute, they're letting me come into their party, and like I get to hang out with these cool art kids now. When I was in high school, like they would all reject me and not hang out with me, so it was kind of this weird experience, but I loved it.
Wow, that's great. One question I have, I think a lot of people have these days, especially, I'm sure probably sitting in your Web3 position, you probably get this all the time as well from, civilians, let's call us. But what is Web3, right? Define it. What's Web 1, 2, and now we're heading into Web3. From your position, what is Web3?
Web3, it's a good question, because if you look at, like, do you Google search Web3 and see what is Web3, there's so many different definitions of it. It's not like it's a consistent definition. I think a lot of publications try to define it, but it's one of those things that I think is being defined as we speak. And so, like maybe a year ago, someone within my sort of network of friends said, "Hey, can you help us out with Web3?" Because they saw me, very engaged in the NFT community and really very much a part of what's happening. And so when they asked that question, I was like, the first question is, what is Web3? Just like you asked, how do you define that? And I think that I have a very specific way of defining it, which I think definitely influences how I approach and look at what's happening within, Web3 and NFTs and so forth, which is first, like there's so many terms like crypto, blockchain, everything else. First, as a blockchain, which is often what's referred to, is a technology shift. It is this new immutable public ledger that is written to and people store stuff on. I mean, currency, of course, but then, of course, NFTs also. But Web3 for me is a cultural shift, is a shift where people are starting to value digital property as much or maybe even more than physical property. And so this idea of digital property and ownership of it and valuing it, which I think is a big leap for a lot of people to say, hey, this JPEG is worth, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Like, why is it worth that much? It's just like when I saw Niantic for the first time and someone paid like over $500,000 for it, like, why is it valued that much? It's a very, very, it's a mental leap. And once you get it, then you start getting it. And there's a lot of sort of things that people have pointed out, like games and so forth, where people buy virtual goods, which I think have, introduced that concept to the younger generation. But that's the leap, is you have to believe that digital property, one, exists, and you can own something that's digital and it's a property, and that you value it. So that transition is how I define Web3, and it's more of a cultural shift than really a technology or a platform shift or something, because that's how many other people define it, but that's how I define it personally.
Yeah, I wonder, because that's a great description, and part of I don't know if it's cultural or if it's age or demographic based, but there's that speed bump in the road, which I'm sure you've seen, of people trying to draw that connection between value and hard-earned dollars and buying something that has no, let's call it, physical mass to it. Right. So how do you have that conversation, or is it worth having with people? How do you have the conversation of, yes, this thing, if you're not in the space and you haven't been buying skins in Fortnite or Call of Duty, you don't understand that intrinsic value. How do you have that conversation with somebody that is not used to the digital world and non-physical assets?
Usually for my approach, I tend to start with people who are more curious about it. Some people are not open to it at all, and so I'll mainly listen to their reasons why they don't like it. But if they're curious and they have questions, I'll definitely spend time answering them and trying to provide them sort of mental frameworks by how to look at a digital sort of virtual, quote unquote, non-physical mass item and place value on it. And one simple one with photos is that if you took your phone out and there's all the photos on your phone, and I deleted all the photos on your phone forever, would you be sad? Would you be upset that I just deleted all the photos on your phone? And most people would say yes, because they're photos of your children or your family or whatever it is, and there's value in that. So when you delete that, it does become something that you will miss and what you'll want. And so the question then becomes, how do you go from there to art? And I think that is something that it's a tough leap. It's not like one where here's how you get there. You sort of have to look into it, and I think it's partly the actual sort of JPEG itself and saying you own it and have a certificate of ownership. But I think a bigger part of it is the community. There is a community of people who do value it and talk about it, and there's this relationship between artist and collector, which I think is very, very unique for NFTs. And with those relationships, I think if you put up a JPEG or a PFP that you didn't own and say, hey, this is my PFP, and you pasted it on your profile, you'd be called out immediately. You would not be part of that community. And so there are some things that form because you are part of that community, and the value comes from that community and what that community values, and going from there. So it's sort of how I do it, but it is a leap. It definitely is a leap.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I want to talk about the augmented reality stuff, obviously Pokemon Go and the different directions that we're seeing, both, aspirational. Maybe Apple will release some AR glasses, and actual things that are happening right now. I want to definitely talk about that and how that folds in to your vision of Web 3.0. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about curation. And we've done spaces, Twitter spaces, light hour spaces where we specifically talk about curation. And one of the ones we did, the direction of the conversation went towards human-based creation versus augmented intelligence, or artificial rather intelligence-based creation, and which one is best, right?
Okay.
And a lot of the different pieces fall in there, like subjectivity and the zeitgeist of what's going on in the world today. Can an AI handle that? What are your thoughts on that? What's best? Is it better to have a human looking at an image, whether it be digital or physical, and making a determination on if that goes in the gallery or not? Or do you just aim a robot at it and let the robot do it? What are your thoughts?
Human curation, sort of the human aspects versus like machines doing it. I mean, the future I want, and this is very specific for one-on-one art and not necessarily all NFTs or everything that's going on within the Web3 space, but this is very particularly in one-on-one art. I would like to have a human help me figure out what art to buy and what art is good or interesting, and not an algorithm. Because I think, I don't want the algorithm to tell what to do, just because the nature of art and what it is, like, I want a human to do it. And so I think, at least for the future of curation in the one-on-one art space, I want a human to be part of that. And so I think human curation, and what I've been definitely pushing forth a lot, is what I want to be the gold standards, what people use and how people discover art in one-on-ones. And so, that particular debate, I'm very much on that one side, even though I have a long history of background in technology and everything else. At least for one, I want to be human curation. In order for that to happen, one, we have to get the community and sort of the market to value that. And once they value it, then we can sort of, say it's worth paying for through commissions or whatever it's going to be. Because in order for people to have careers, which people, in order for to do curation full time, they need to, have it be a career and be a profession they can sort of pursue. There has to be a way to sort of pay for them for that work. And so my dream would be is that the average curator can come in and make a good living on it, but then the sort of the top line sort of amazing curator who are really, really good at the way they do and truly talented in that regard can make millions and so forth. So it provides that ecosystem where you could truly, truly succeed and do really well in that space, because if that happens, then I think human curation will succeed and be sustainable. If it doesn't happen, then it'll be hard to, because nobody's going to keep on doing it necessarily for free, because they can't sustain themselves. And they want it to be a whole economy, because it shouldn't just be 2 or 3 curators that sort of determine everything, I would like to have a wide range of curators to bring out all the diversity of art around the world and all representations and everything else. And that can't happen unless we have a lot of curators, not just a select few, which I think in the past it's been sort of more that way, and they're more the gatekeepers, where I want to transform curators and the meaning of curation from a gatekeeper into this idea of more being advocates for the artist and advocacy. And so it takes time. I think it's and NFTs are an incredible opportunity for that change. And so a lot of what I'm doing with Monolith, with with my personal curation and guest curations I've done, is to further that sort of that vision of the future that I would like to see for one-on-one art.
Yeah, and with that vision, what's a real or a current world analog to this vision of this high end creator that you have? Would it be like a sommelier, or like who kind of fits the archetype of what you're thinking for this creator of the future, or curator of the future?
I haven't thought about that. Like, who would be the right person? I think there is this element of taste, which I think is a very hard thing to sort of measure or find. It's just, I think it's an innate sort of talent. I imagine that's true for sommeliers. We have to be able to taste the wine. If you can't taste the nuances, and if you have no sense of taste, then you can't be a sommelier. There's no way, because you have to be able to taste the wine. Yeah. So I think taste is just a simple thing, which I think is probably more talent than anything else. But I think it's also a desire to do it and want to do it, because if you really want to be an artist and you're sort of doing curation, not because you love it, because maybe you can, because you're trying to do it, I think you have to have a sort of a love for it, because it takes a bit of, just time and effort and doing it because you love it versus necessarily doing it for the money or anything else, because it won't sustain you if you don't have that pure love for it. Because I think there'll be up and downs, but also, especially at this time when it's still growing as a part of the ecosystem, I think the artists and collectors are very well-defined parts of the NFT ecosystem, but curators are not. And I think they're slowly developing, and I'm hoping that through what I do and through the products I work on and work with, I'll help build that up as a sort of a key pillar within the NFT ecosystem.
Yeah, there's so much there. One of the directions that I wanted to take this interview in is, obviously I want to talk about Monolith Gallery and what's the entrepreneur's brainchild, what is that nugget. But before that, like I kind of foreshadowed in the beginning, you have a history in sort of this virtual world. I mean, Google Earth, right? That's the ultimate, representation of the physical world in a digital space where we can use it and get around, right? And visit places where we may not have visited before. So that seems like that's a beautiful foundation to talk about, your experience in that virtual world, and then overlaying onto that the Pokemon Go augmented reality type stuff. And I'm seeing personally all kinds of hints of where things could go with augmented reality, on the art side and in the non-art side, maybe in the medical side, all kinds of different ways that this stuff will manifest. Are you seeing from your perspective, with all that history and knowledge and experience that you have building and working on these types of products, is the Web3 world that we're going to see, let's call it in 3-4 years from now, is that world going to be the AR side of it and a foregone conclusion, kind of like an iPhone today is a foregone conclusion, whereas about 10 years ago it wasn't? It was science fiction. Like, where do you see things going, with looking through the lens of your experience with Web 3.0 and the augmented VR and all this stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, and I think the key thing that I'm seeing, and I think this is, and you can feel it from your just day-to-day life. So if we just take, and the pandemic was definitely a sort of a key point in history where a lot of things made a big shift. And a lot of things that were completely inconceivable before are now conceivable. The simple idea of working remotely was a non-starter for many companies around the world. But today it's almost an accepted thing that will happen. And so pre-pandemic, everybody was in the office, and for most work, it was in office, sort of in person, sort of work environments. During the pandemic, because of the pandemic, everybody was remote. There was no in person, just because it just wasn't the norm, at least for many companies. Some people had to go in, and I think that like healthcare workers and people who are providing sort of essential services, and I think that's was important. But for many people who work, it was all remote, and even artists who used to travel either for their work or go to gallery showings or do physical art, they were stuck at home. So a lot of them trying to figure out, how can I still do art at home? So you have this whole digital experience during the pandemic. And as we came out of the sort of pandemic, there is this now, people are going back to work, but it's not 100% back to in person. It is this hybrid world of both remote and in person. There's a blend between sort of this virtual sort of work versus like in person real work. And I think that flow will have I see a similar path, mainly because people want it, especially seeing at NFT NYC, which is that we came together in this digital world of, all the stuff we've seen in Web3. And because we're all home, we almost all met online. And so now that we're sort of coming out of the pandemic slowly, people are seeing that they really do enjoy meeting people in real life, like at NFT NYC or East Denver or NFT LA or Art Basel. There is something amazing about hanging out with people that speak the same language of NFTs or have the same interest in art and just hanging out together in real life. There's something magical and people realize, or at least definitely miss that. But I don't think we'll go back to full in person, like full just only hang out socially, sort of only in the real world. But it'll be a blend of both the sort of the digital life as well as the real life, and that bridging of the digital and the physical is a huge opportunity, I think, in the coming years. And that's where I think AR has a distinct opportunity, where you have this technology, which is not about sending you into the metaverse and fully digital, which a lot of sort of metaverses are doing out there, and sort of doing this fully immersive experience. But AR provides this ability to layer that on top of the real world and have a blended sort of hybrid experience. And I think that a lot of people will want that, because there is something magical about hanging out in real life, yet you don't want to lose the sort of the community and the international aspect of what you found in the community you found online during the pandemic. Yeah. And so that's where I think that opportunity comes from. And it's not even technology. It's just people wanting to hang out with other people, but they're going to want to do it both in the digital world and the physical world. And technology will just be a way to deliver that. And AR is a very distinct technology that has that inherent, because it's a mixed reality, to help people find a way to get that connection with other human beings.
What's the barrier right now? What's the biggest barrier in your mind to full on floodgates opening and wide adoption of mixed media, AR, etc.? Is it the hardware? We don't have the glasses yet, or with Meta, the Quest, that's too clunky? Like what do you think? What's the main holdup from us moving forward in that space?
So I would divide up AR into sort of I'll expand the definition of AR to something that is not just what you see on movies and TV, where you put these glasses on and then you see all this stuff layered on top of it. It's just enhancing the world you live in. It could be sound. It could just be like AirPods in your ear and you hear something that's augmenting your experience. It could be other stuff that could just happen to your phone. It's just making your reality more than what you may see with your eyes, but this digital reality that also exists and in sort of the exact same time space as it, but you just can't see it. You just got to have a way to see it. And so, one, I'll just expand the definition of augmented reality, but the second one is the reason for that. And so the reason doesn't really exist in a compelling way yet. And I think that may be the biggest barrier, is to find that real reason, which I think eventually will be meeting people in real life. And Niantic has done that with Pokemon Go to bring people. There's so many people that have met in real life, and people have got married, and all these stories that have happened with Niantic and Pokemon Go through that. And so, I think the reason is the key thing, and that will be the thing that brings people into the door, and that may be a blend of technology or just the right game or just the right experience that people see that reason and feel a need being met. And I think AR glasses could be part of that story or it couldn't. It just depends on what that reason is and what we can use to sort of manifest that. I sort of think about like Nintendo back in the day. They were competing against like PlayStation and Xbox, who had these incredible graphics cards and super sort of amazing technology. But Nintendo went a different way. They went more and less worried about the best graphics, didn't have the best graphics, but they had the best gameplay. They had the most fun playing their games because of the additional sort of, like, if you look at the Nintendo, the Wii, they had these sort of in real life sort of tracking elements that made it super fun to play. And so it was successful not because of the graphics, it's successful because it's a great game. And so I think that great game or that great experience or that great reason is the core of what will make AR successful.
Yeah, and that is the question, right? What's the killer app? Like arguably the killer app for the internet itself was email, right? Well, email and web pages, but it was email and being able to communicate instantaneously across great distances, and be accurate about it. What is the killer app? And some would say pornography was the killer app for the internet as well, right? So, I mean, let's be real, right? So,
that's true for probably any technology.
Yeah, maybe that's the killer app for AR.
You could
like,
say
what are you doing,
that,
Frederick? Don't worry about what I'm doing right now.
But like, I think it evolves too. Like, it may have been email initially, but then we had web pages, and then we had Google Maps on there. Then we had like YouTube, and then we had Web3. I think the use cases evolve as people get more comfortable with the technology. So I think it may start at one place, but I think it evolves further than that.
Yeah, so much. So light art is doing is collaborating with you with your Monolith Gallery project. Can you explain what the collaboration is and what you guys are cooking up over there?
Yeah, so I think Monolith Gallery is, it started off as an open curation system and a way to sort of rethink the gallery space. So it's not just the typical white walls, but it sort of presents art in these landscapes and that's the hall or the gallery space, and then the art drops down from the sky like these giant basically monoliths, like you'd see in a movie, and sort of larger than life sort of experience, and sort of present them in this grand manner. And so the part that's really taken off with Monolith is this open curation that anybody can submit art anywhere in the world, and it's a very inclusive sort of curation sort of process. And it's almost like curating curation. So I'm not actually doing each individual curation; those are being done by artists or collectors. I just sort of bring together the collection of curations to then present in the different halls on Monolith. And so there's 20 plus halls on Monolith. It'll grow over time. And I've done curations of all different styles. A lot of it's photography because I'm very much part of the photography community and I love photography, but it's all kinds of art. It could be physical painting, it could be 3D, it could be AI, it could be lots of different stuff. And so, but it's also been very international. There are people from all around the world who have sort of curated their works and presented it in the Monolith Gallery. And so I was talking to Marcos, or Dap, I guess. I'm not sure if I should say his real name. You can edit that out if you want.
But everyone knows.
But we were talking about it, and Light had this incredible alpha collection of, I guess, 200 photos from 100 different artists. And so, it was a nice way to say, okay, we could do a takeover of all 20 plus halls within Monolith Gallery to present all that work. And so I love what Light was doing. Light Art was doing, and it's incredible pieces with lots of them from friends, and so it was a nice way to collaborate between the two products or teams or just our initiatives that we're trying to do. And in many ways, we're trying to do the same thing of helping artists and push forward NFTs, but are different ways, given our talents and given what our focuses are. And so being able to create these partnerships, I think, it's great, both for widening out the audience for artists, but also I think from a decentralized sort of philosophy standpoint, I think that the way you grow stronger is not by consolidating power, but you grow stronger by creating more links and more connections with more nodes within the system. And so my philosophy for a lot of these projects is the partnerships with good sort of other actors in the space and other great projects, I think will strengthen all of us. And so the power comes from the network and the community versus coming from one person gathering all the power and putting it into one place.
Yeah, very good. Congratulations on that. I'm looking forward to seeing how that takes off. It should be amazing. And this is your first time doing a collaboration like this, right?
It's the first one where Takeover actually launched, because I've done collaborations with Obscura. I'm talking to RawDAO, and there's actually a few artists who are going to do it on their own and curate a whole takeover. But they're all sort of in stages of development and coming together. Where I've been talking with with Light.art and Marcos about this, and this is probably the first one that actually launched, and so it should be pretty exciting because I don't think I've never done this before and had it launched this way, and it's a lot of work. It's doing 20 curations is a lot of work by yourself, and so the only way I can do it now, I do mine every 2 weeks or so, is that I get curation submissions and I launch 20 plus curations every 2 weeks. We've had like seven exhibitions so far. I think we've had like over 150 curations and almost 1,500 other art pieces that have been displayed and shown on Monolith Gallery. So it's been awesome to be able to do that for the artist community and to give them that exposure and visibility in a very diverse way that sort of is good about representation across many different dimensions. And so it's also a different way to get exposure and a different way to get discovery and all that to happen, which it's been an amazing sort of response by the community. And that's the only reason I can do it, is because I have enough coming in all the time that I never run out. Like at some point, I have to create some way to say, hey, submit stuff. But there's so much coming in all the time that I never had to put a call out, say, hey, please submit stuff to Monolith Gallery. Eventually, I might do a focused one on specific sort of art forms. Mm-hmm. But for now, there's so much coming in that I just got to keep up with the submissions coming in.
Isn't that great? What a great problem to have, though, right? I'm too popular.
Exactly.
Right? So what's next? What's next for Chikai? What's next for Monolith? What's next for you in the AR mixed reality world, NFT world? What's on your to-do list?
There are so many new projects coming out for Monolith. One I announced recently is Monolith Books. And we're going to do a book of all the curations that have been exhibited on Monolith Gallery. But there's actually a couple more projects which are secret at the moment that should be launching in the next month or two. That should be pretty exciting. There's so many great ideas, and it's just fun working with these artists. It's the people that I do want to hang out with, so to be able to help them, and then everybody being able to sort of reap the rewards of the success, I think has been great. And so I hope to continue that and help more artists and get more visibility for sort of the people who are more unseen and underappreciated. I think that takes a lot of work, but I think there's so much good art out there and just haven't had a chance to get the right visibility. So I'm doing my small part to help move that forward, as well as Light.art. Light.art's done a great job of bringing a lot of photographers into the limelight, which that deserve that sort of attention.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and definitely thank you for all that you do in the space, because it's Yeah, like you said, there's a mountain of art that needs eyeballs on it, and every piece helps in that direction. What if people want to connect with you? They want to look at the Monolith Gallery, or keep an eye out on whatever other projects you have coming up, secret or otherwise. Where should they follow you?
You can follow me on my personal account, which is Life of C, Lifec, and for Monolith Gallery, just Monolith Gallery is the Twitter account, and the site is monolith.gallery. So hopefully pretty easy to remember.
Very cool. Chikai, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time and letting me bend your ear. And I hope you'll come back on when these other projects start rolling out and talk about them, because I feel like we're going to want to know about those. So,
for sure, I will definitely reach out to you. I would love to talk about them. They're pretty exciting. Yeah, they're. I wish I could say more, but I haven't. I'm in the sort of process of getting them released, but they're exciting. I'll definitely come back. But I appreciate you inviting me on, and
absolutely,
it's been a great talking to you. I've had a great time.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is good. People need to know about this stuff. And I definitely need to have you back on just to talk. I mean, we got to do a whole discussion about AR, just that space, just the whole mixed reality, AR, metaverse, just that. I want to dive in, get in your brain about all that. There's so much to talk about, and I have so many questions that I feel like you can answer. So, all right, Chikai, thank you so much, man. You have a good rest of your day.
You too.